Okay, so we are on lesson number 194 of a workbook of A Course in Miracles. I place the future in the hands of God, and the reason why I'm laughing is because if you're like me, and everybody to some degree, we're all the same in one regard. You know, I've been in a lot of situations, and the physical surroundings of the situation are less important than the interior, how should I put this, the interior condition of your thinking and your experience is in regards to what's occurring to you. And we call them, in the 12-step program, we used to call them, jackpots. Alcoholics and addicts have a tendency to get themselves into jackpots. And there's an interesting phenomena around that, because many of us, and we sought in desperation. This is one of the things you learn in the 12-step program, because if you're a good addict, you weren't given up until you had absolutely no hope and no way of continuing. And in a moment of desperation, many of us have had conversion experiences of the Spirit lifting us, raising us out of the self-imposed conditions that we find ourselves in those jackpot moments. And since I've been using A Course in Miracles, since I've been studying A Course in Miracles and hearing Jesus' voice, one of the most helpful things to remember is the lesson that we're doing today. I place the future in the hands of God, because there are so many permutations. After a while, you start to see how self-centered the ego has, in a sense, conditioned us to be, and constantly looking for outcomes that benefit us at the expense of other people, and which only continues problems and is obviously not in line with what anybody's experience of salvation is, which is the opening line of today's lesson. Today's idea takes another step toward quick salvation, and a giant stride it is indeed. Because nobody here in the world of space and time can predict all the outcomes and all the effects of anyone's decision. And that's the best reason in the world for placing my future in the hands of God in any given moment, because the decisions that I make are always going to be... The idea that I need to make a decision, or the idea that I think that there is a future that this moment leads to, is part of the effects of believing that separation is true. And so when I'm in a situation where all of a sudden it's like, oh no, what do I do now? I don't want anyone to have to repeat the situation, including myself. So the best thing I've learned to do for me is to constantly place the future in the hands of God, because in the hands of God, the future outcome is assured to have a beneficial and efficient effect toward the achieving of salvation, which is the only true achievement that we have here, that we can come to here in space and time, which is, of course, released from the idea that we're separate and the experiences that come from separation. There's a great line, and I can never get it exactly right, and quote it exactly right, from the text of the Course, where Jesus says no one and nothing can prevail against the Son of God, who has commended his Spirit unto his Father. And this is what we're being asked to do, is on a continuing basis, accept today's idea. Because if we do accept today's idea, you have passed anxiety, pits of hell, blackness of depression, thoughts of sin and devastation brought about by guilt. Accept today's idea, and you have released the world from all imprisonment by loosing by loosening the heavy chains that lock the door to freedom on it. Because part of the heavy chains are made by our idea of what should occur in the future, so what we're making occur now, and because just about everything we think here, until we learn to make contact and communicate and be in communication with the Holy Spirit, everything we do now is directed by the ego to enforce the continuing dream of separation on us, wherein we can find no solution. And when any one of us begins to loosen the world from all we thought it was, we're eliminating, whether we're conscious of them or not, we're eliminating the chains that have imprisoned us and that we've imprisoned our brothers with in our making of the ego for them, that we relate to, rather than the truth of who they are as perfect and whole. And that's the benefit of placing the future in the hands of God, is that in a particular sense, this undoing was once shown to me as much like the interior of a rubber band ball, and all the rubber bands are all entwined. At some point in time, someone here has to stand still to allow for the entanglement to be unentangled by one who can see the entirety of the knot and not just any one small part. And I was asked to cooperate in this as being one way of understanding salvation. In salvation, by standing still in times when the maximum untanglement can occur. And so in those moments where things sort of seem to be confused on all fronts, and I don't know, when the outcome seems to be uncertain in my mind as to what will occur, the idea and the action of placing the future in the hands of God eases my mind and takes away all that tension that I was putting into the entanglement. And as I release my tension and take my tension from the entanglement, that which it is entangled with is loosened as well, and then, in a sense, has the ability, has an easier shot, let's call it, at feeling for a second non-stress in the situation, and allowing himself possibly to make decisions that free himself and free all. Because that's the communication that we're giving in that moment of stepping back, in that moment of being still an instant. Whatever your practice is, however you've come to know and accept how to do this, in those moments where you seem to have been led by the ego into a situation or a pattern of thought which you've never actually been able to get out of sufficiently to not allow it to return. That's the whole idea, so we don't have to repeat these lessons over and over again. All things are lessons God would have me learn, but we like to learn them once and for all and not have to repeat them again. And one of the sure ways of doing it is by placing the future in the hands of God, relieving ourselves of the tension of the worry and everything that this lesson is talking to us about, and experiencing this from another perspective. And this is what it's saying. This is, in a sense, it brings in the idea, if there's a back door to this, we'll get to God holds your future as he holds your past and present. They are one to him, and so they should be one to you. Yet in this world, the temporal progression still seems real. Yes, we can't deny that there seems to be a temporal progression and a sequence that goes along with that temporal progression. And within that sequence of that temporal progression, things take place. So within that temporal progression, there's a point in time at which we make a decision, and that decision has placed the future in the hands of God. And in that instant, and this is what I'm going to get to, the back door to understanding whether or not you've actually done this. And so you are not asked to understand the lack of sequence really found in time. That was last night when I read that lesson. When I read that line, it really made me laugh, because there are lessons that we've done that aim at giving us a new understanding of time, and yet, because of this seeming temporal progression, it's hard to remember those new ideas about time when your life doesn't seem to operate by them. But when you free yourself in moments such as this, you'll see that time isn't linear, except in the idea of the temporal progression and the sequentiality by which we view it. That imposes the reality, but it doesn't necessarily limit the effects that can occur when we make decisions with the Holy Spirit, and when we make decisions such as this one to place the future in the hands of God. And time can do very funny things when we loose it from our fixed view and understanding of it and let it be what it can be in the hands of the Holy Spirit and Jesus who is in control of space and time. It's amazing what can occur in the swiftness with which things can change. And forgiveness can come to free you, and healing can come from the forgiveness, because our relationship with space and time is so limited. And yet in moments of forgiveness we go back as far as we can in time and space in order to advance as far as we can, which is why physical healing is possible, because none of this is really solid. And one of the things that is happening is we're eliminating our fear of some of the occurrences that and experiences that come along with the demonstration of the fact that time isn't what we thought it actually is, this sort of linear progression and sequentiality, and in fact it can change in the blink of an eye and be used in an entirely different way by an entirely different mind for the healing and salvation of the world. And for many of you who have these experiences, you see that what happens in time in those moments is quite different than what happens in time when we think it's this sort of temporal progression in a linear fashion. And so you were not asked to understand the lack of sequence really found in time. You are but asked to let the future go and place it in God's hands, and you will see, and this is what I wanted to get to, and you will see by your experience that you have laid the past and present in His hands, because the past will punish you no more, and future dread will be meaningless now. And if everything happens by our thought, and we must get the result of our thinking, look at the relief and the healing that can come when we allow ourselves to have these experiences and these things begin to happen. I mean, if you have been following along and doing these lessons, and you're beginning to at least get this conceptually, you're starting to understand that everything that occurs to us, including the manufacturing of a body in the world of space and time, is an illusion, a sleight of hand, in which time and space are participatory. So just think of what can occur in a moment when this occurs to the max of our ability, and you will see by your experience that you have laid the past and present in His hands as well, because the past will punish you no more, and future dread will be meaningless now. And imagine when that generalizes, and just this is where it's aiming at, the salvation of the world, to the generalization of that occurrence to include the remembering not to laugh at the tiny mad idea where separation seemed to be born, and where the illusory world seemed to have come to take the place of reality. So in any given instant, this is preparing you for the fact that the entirety of separation can be passed by and you can be free from it in the same way as you do in any one instant that you use this and get these experiences and have these effects. So why don't you and I just place the future in the hand of God today and loosening the heavy chains that lock the door to freedom. You'll feel much freer here, and then it'll be more than a hope, the certainty of the accomplishment of salvation, wherein which the dream of space and time is no longer available to punish you at all. So therefore future dread will not only be meaningless, will be impossible. That moment will be we'll hearken that moment, we'll hasten that moment into the occurrence, so that we can take our place with the saviors of the world and have saved the world and return to the reality which we never left, except in a tiny tick of time that was brought about by our remembering not to laugh at the absurdity of the idea that you could be separate from everything. So I'm going to place the future in the hands of God, and I would advise that you do that too. And if we two of us join in doing that, just imagine the miraculous quickening towards salvation, the giant stride indeed it becomes.